I bought a car. It's a 2004 Toyota Matrix XRS. It came with these goofy TE reps, slotted rotors, and green brake pads. I don't know what those are. It's got Quatrac Pro tires, which are all seasons, but they're kind of decent all seasons. It came with a bumper in horrific condition, which pretty much looks like it was partially sandblasted, but it's got these cool fog lights. There wasn't a license plate holder anymore in the front, so I just zip tied my front plate there, because, you know, who cares? And it's got a 2ZZ motor, which is going to make a little more horsepower than my MR2 Spider. They're both really slow. It's got some kind of Alibaba head unit here. We've got an inverter here, which I've never used. Cigarette lighter, which I've never used. So maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. AC kind of works, doesn't blow that cold. It came with some records and stuff. It had a horrible shift knob, so I replaced that with a GR86 shift knob, which I think works pretty good. Same pattern and all that. E-brake works. All these plastic components are like broken slightly. There was like a horrific short shifter in here, which I replaced with a standard shifter. There's a video of that in this card up here, which you can click on if you're not watching this on a PlayStation, which is how I watch most of my videos. And the other thing is, we just had a check engine light for running too rich, which I just fixed by getting a new MAF, and there's going to be a video about that in the cards as well. As soon as those come out, this video might come out before those do, which would make sense considering it's the I bought the car video. But now the issues are sorted out. So why did I buy a Matrix at all? Well, basically, a Matrix is really just a Toyota Corolla. This one is sort of hot because it's got the like 2ZZ engine in it. That's the XRS moniker. That's what that's for. So, you know, it's just kind of getting like a kind of a hot hatch, which I thought would be kind of fun. Never had one before. I haven't really had like a front wheel drive sporty car before, which is interesting because when you hit lift in first gear, sometimes the steering wheel like turns to the right, like you get a little bit of torque steer, so that's just something different. I drove my friend's Honda Fit. There's another video you can stick in a in a card, and that thing was kind of a blast, and it's pretty practical, so I figured, you know, like, hey, maybe I need a hatch too. So I picked up this. I should be able to offload it for similar to what I paid, hopefully. So it shouldn't be like, there shouldn't really be any long-term costs associated with this other than like gas, insurance, whatever. So I just thought it would be like a fun thing to have for a little while, maybe like a year. We'll see if I accidentally end up keeping it for like way too long. But yeah, it's not really the plan currently. Real quick, let me show you the rear. This is actually quite large up here, even with the seats up. I have a car seat in there, or I would show you how it looks with the seats down. But suffice it to say that this entire volume is perfectly flat, and it basically makes it like almost like a Ford Transit van or something like that. Like it's pretty big and flat in there with that down. And then obviously having a car seat is something that my MR2 can't do at all. My other option is to drive the Sequoia, which gets 15 miles per gallon. So this thing gets mid to upper 20s depending on how much you go into redline, which means I get mid 20s. But that's pretty cool. And then other than that, cool party trick is boop, the hatch. The hatch separately goes up. I loved that about the 4Runner and the Sequoia. The 4Runner and the Sequoia, you can like roll down the back window. I think that's pretty cool. And to have a window trick means it just feels like a Toyota to me. So now that I've sort of talked about the car a little bit, let's go for a drive. So, driving the Matrix. That's like 60 miles an hour at the top of second gear. So that's, you know, the Matrix experience with the 2ZZ, right? You got lift at 6,400 RPM or something, somewhere in there. And then it goes up to like 8,250 or something like that, 8,200. So that's kind of your power band. And then everywhere outside of that, it feels like an economy car pretty much. Although I think this one has like an exhaust. So you get a little more noise, which gives you the illusion of pep a lot of the time. The previous owner told me that the owner before him did a clutch swap, and the previous owner only owned the car for like 5,000 miles. So I believe, based on the way it drives, that I think it has a lightweight flywheel, because it's just so finicky. Like when I try to let my friends who know how to drive stick drive it, they just have a lot of trouble getting like a smooth launch. And I had trouble at first. It took me a little while to get used to the way this car likes to, start from the stop. So that's a very interesting thing. You also have to be really quick when you're going through gears, because when you clutch in, by the time you pull the next gear and clutch out, the RPM drops a lot. So you need to be quick and get it in the next gear, or you have to actually blip the throttle to get it to smoothly engage, which is kind of funny. So that was like 5th to 4th. You've got to be pretty quick. 35, so 45. There, and that's 45 miles an hour. So, it makes a lot of noise, there's a lot of drama, but realistically you don't go that fast, which is pretty much the perfect thing that you want in like a daily fun car, I think. My number one concern really is 2ZZ reliability. They don't have like a terrible reputation really, but maybe they should. I know people with like head gasket issues, and my friend had his timing chain explode. I think that was probably the fault of a mechanic that worked on the car incorrectly, but the point is they are not as hardy as some other Toyota motors. Although sometimes I wonder how much, like, the world is very small, right? Because the internet connects us all together. So if you know one person with a car problem, everybody in the community like can find out about that car problem very easily. So it makes it sound overblown. One thing I didn't mention about this car yet is that it has tane lowering springs, or at least it has green springs on it, which I presume are tane lowering springs. On these tane springs and the stock shocks are actually impressively comfortable still for me. I run Coney shocks on my MR2 and my stock shocks were blown, and it wasn't really uncomfortable, but when I upgraded to the Coneys, I was like, wow, these are way better riding, I thought I was gonna get it and immediately be like, it needs a rear sway bar, because that's a very common mod for a front wheel drive car, especially like hatchbacks, Honda Fit, whatever. You want to put a rear sway bar on, because it'll reduce some of the body roll, and that'll help prevent camber loss on McPherson cars. And then also it's going to allow you to soften the front, which will give you a little more grip, because you're going to need that since it's front wheel drive and they're doing all the work. But really, I took this for a drive, and I thought, like, oh my god, it actually handles pretty good with just the slightly stiffer springs. I was really, really surprised. I'm not a big lowering spring advocate normally, but having driven this with the tane springs, actually, I could say it's not a bad mod. If you just keep your stock shocks and just put the lowering springs on, it's a little more aggressive. You can feel some bumps in the road, but it does not really transform the ride quality in a bad way, especially if you leave the stock shocks. So a lot of people make the mistake of just thinking that they need coilovers right away. Like, coilovers are really expensive, and coilover companies like to sponsor YouTube channels, and then the YouTube channel like talks about how much it transforms the car, and it does transform the car for sure, but from a street aspect, it transforms it in a way that makes the ride horrible unless you spend a lot of money on like MCS 4-ways or something, because the dampers aren't that good. If Coney Yellow inserts, it's not even a shock, it's not even a whole shock, you get the inserts, they're $600. They're beautiful, they're single adjustable, they ride amazingly. If you spend $650 on Megans, you know, you're getting like the bushing at the bottom, like you've got a strut that's like made to fit your exact car. It's got like the adjustable spring perch. It comes with springs. There's all these more. There's a top hat. There's all this stuff. You're paying the same price. The damper is garbage. The damper is garbage. And even if you buy $1,000 coilovers, the dampers are usually still pretty garbage, or they're at least intentionally tuned stiff because people expect coilovers to make their car stiff. Anyway, I'm kind of ranting. This isn't really directly about the Matrix. And don't go spend $1,500 on coilovers right when you buy your car. Just don't do that. You're changing the dampers, you're changing the springs, you don't even know how your car handles yet. Take it to autocross first, and then if you think, yeah, I really want to spend a lot of money on this car, then still don't buy coilovers first. Buy a sway bar first. If you're planning on buying coilovers eventually, then you don't have to get lowering springs or separate shocks. But at least if you're like, oh man, it understeers too much, put a rear bar on. If it oversteers too much, put a front bar on. If the bar has settings, put it at the softest one or the stiffest one, and then put it on the opposite and see which one you like better. And then you can go between the settings. Like, just buying a new car and then buying a whole bunch of crap because that's what makes YouTubers money doesn't mean that's what you should copy. But this thing, just on a slightly twisty road, this is very low speeds. We're doing like 20 right now. It's a pretty sweet handling car. We'll just be a little goofy here. There's a good amount of body roll. The body roll is not necessarily bad. I took my stock spring MR2 Spider with just a front sway bar to Dominion Raceway, which is a video I'll make eventually. And it was sweet. The instructor loved the way the car handled. I thought I was gonna get there and be like, oh, it's so soft. I need stiffer springs, I need coilovers, blah, blah, blah. And truly, I got to the track and I was like, man, this thing just handles beautifully. It's soft, which is great. Soft is great. Anyway, I don't want to ramble about car modification too much, but it's a first car video. Usually when you watch a YouTube video that's like, oh, I just bought this car, then they are like, these are all the parts I bought and I'm gonna do all this stuff. It's consumerism, which is fine, but I think you're making a mistake if you buy a car intending to massively change it. Unless truly, like, working on the car gives you that much joy and you have that much spare money, buy the car that you want. And if you can't afford the car that you want, buy a cheap car, like a Corolla. It's in reverse. This car's so goofy. Thanks for watching. I raced my MR2 Spider. Please watch those videos. They're very entertaining, I promise. All right, see you. That was the best launch either of us had all day. I had 2 seconds of improvement on the table that I gave up with the cone. This lap is super important. I really need to cook it coming through here. Oh my god, I missed the cone.
Damn it.